Yeah. I guess I stay up a little later. All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody, it's Dr. Kimber. I'm excited to be with you. It's Wellness Wednesday. We have an interesting topic today that we're going to discuss. It is known as EMFs. Maybe you've heard about it all over the internet, or you're hearing in your talk groups a little bit more about it. But what is it? What does it stand for? What do we do about it? Do we have to really pay attention to it? Those are some of the questions that we're going to talk about today. So EMF, electromagnetic field. That's the big name, electromagnetic field. And EMFs are all around us. So there's two types of EMFs. Now, the first is a higher frequency ionizing EMF. So that's like your X-rays, your gamma rays, things like that. They actually damage DNA. We're not talking about that today. What we're going to talk about today is the low to mid frequency non-ionizing. So that's things like your power lines, your cell phones, your Wi-Fi. That's what we're going to talk about today because it's ubiquitous. It's all around us. And I guess the biggest question that I know I ask is, all right, what do I need to be hyper aware of or extra concern with, and what can I just let go? And I'm not sure I'll answer that totally today. My goal is really to just bring awareness because like you, I'm learning more and more about this EMF all the time. But here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that I am noticing in patients, those patients that actually are very sensitive. I have patients that will literally make adjustments. They'll do grounding sheets and their periods will go all over the board. So you can't tell me that it doesn't make a difference in the body. It does make a difference in the body. I'm seeing it more and more in my patients, and I think we're going to see it more and more. Here's the truth. The children right now of our generation are the ones that are going to grow up consistently 24/7 exposed. So we don't even know exactly what EMF is going to do to us. And that's yet to be determined in the future. So the big question is, are we against fighting or blocking EMFs? So let's understand, first of all, some of the highest exposures that give off EMFs. They're things like your cell phones. Now, obviously, when the cell phone is close to your body and in constant use, it's giving off more EMF. So to get that cell phone away from you, when you're speaking on your cell phone, you want to speak with it on speakerphone, not right up to your ear, and avoiding things like AirPods and whatnot that you wear in your ear, okay? Unless you have an EMF sticker or protection on your AirPods or your devices. Things like Wi-Fi routers will give off a lot of EMF exposure. Most of the time they're on 24/7 in our homes, and they are just a continuous emission of EMF exposure. Smart meters, they emit a very strong exposure. Like I mentioned, Bluetooth, like your AirPods, fitness trackers, headphones, all of those, they give off a high amount of EMF emission. And then laptops, especially when they're used on your lap. Okay, so those are some of the higher EMF emissions in places that you will find. Now, we have some hidden sources as well. wiring behind walls. So think about where your headboard is. If you're sleeping, and I will see this in patients, it disrupts sleep. So it can disrupt sleep in some people. But if your headboard is against a wall that has a lot of wiring going on, that can be affecting you. Spring mattresses, they actually act like an antenna. And so that can affect things like dirty electricity. So that's like your dimmer switches, some of your electronics, CFL bulbs. CFLs are compact fluorescent lamp bulbs. It's a type of light bulb that uses significantly less energy. So those types of things, those are hidden sources of EMFs. So EMFs, electromagnetic fields, we've talked about some areas that we find them that are most common, that are high, and we've talked about some hidden areas of EMFs. All right, so Ellie, I see you're listening from Iowa. Welcome. And here's a question that I wanted to ask. What concerns do you have, or have you heard of EMFs? So in the chat, let me know if you've been hearing about this EMF thing, and maybe you're concerned about it, maybe not. So let me know if you've heard about it. All right, so I'm going to post some links for you to some studies out there, just so you can do your own research. But I wanted to share a couple of research highlights from you. First of all, the International Agency for Research on Cancer Classification. Again, I'll post that link for you. It does say that radio frequency EMFs are possibly carcinogenic. So we're starting to do some research, and they're starting to say there's possibility that it's carcinogenic. The National Toxicology Program studies. There's evidence in tumors in rats with high radio frequency radiation exposure. Okay, so and then another one is an interphone study where they're seeing that there's increased brain tumor risk with heavy cell phone use. Okay, so we think about it against our heads when we're talking in the headset. Not healthy, not wise. Let's not do that. Remember years ago, we had these little phones, cell phones. Many of us women would tuck them right into our bra strap here. And I remember seeing reports, and this is before I knew anything about EMFs. This is such a long time ago. It was a handy way to carry it, but I remember seeing reports of the breast cancer increasing due to more and more women putting their phones here. Now let's think, where do where do you put your cell phones? You put your cell phone in your front pockets. A lot of times we see that. What's going to be affected? What can we possibly be on the lookout for in the future? And that is testicular cancer, prostate cancer, things like that. So it's a really good idea, men, to put your phone in a different location. Women, I think we're for the most part putting our phones in different locations, but even at that, think about it. All right, so let's talk a minute about some common things that I'm seeing in practice and that are associated with EMF exposure. So I'm seeing sleep disturbances. If we try all the tools out of the toolbox to improve sleep, a lot of times when we take and cut out the EMFs in the bedrooms, sleep improves. Fatigue is another thing we're seeing a lot of. Headaches, we're seeing a lot of that. Brain fog or cognitive issues, just see a ton of that. Tinnitus is another interesting thing that can be a sign of EMF frequency and being sensitive to EMFs. So if you have tinnitus, if you're struggling with that and you cannot seem to get over it, it could be that you are more sensitive to the EMFs than you think. What about you? Have any of your symptoms changed when you got rid of the EMF exposure, when you lowered that, in case that happens to be you? I'd love to know. Okay, so share in the comments if you have an experience with this. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the health concerns that are out there that we're hearing about and that maybe we should perk up to. Okay, so first of all, EMFs can actually interfere with the normal electrical activities of our cells, which actually can influence that cellular function. So drinking your electrolytes are going to be extra important. Sorry, I got electromagnetic, electrolytes, but drinking electrolytes is going to be extra important. So here's what I want you to pay attention to. There is some studies out there that are showing that electrolyte intake can be influenced negatively if the EMFs around you are extra high. So what does that mean? That means that you may need to increase the electrolytes in your body because they're getting blocked. The absorption is getting blocked. And your body needs those electrolytes to help that cellular connection, that cellular inflammation or information to go back and forth. Okay, I'll put my favorite electrolyte link in the comments for you. I love Element. I think it's a fantastic electrolyte, and I'll put it in the comments for you. The other thing is that the body, this is also what we're seeing, is that the body can sense the EMF similar to light. So what's happening, and we're seeing circadian rhythm being very disrupted. So one of the tests that I do, one of the lab tests I do, the Dutch test, I see what the circadian rhythm is on that Dutch test. And oftentimes I can tell, I mean, it's all over the board for many patients that I'll test. And light, getting that first morning light is so important. Getting that last light of the day is so important, but also controlling the EMF exposure, because the body is perceiving it in the same manner, is very important when it comes to that cortisol diurnal rhythm. There's also some studies out there that are suggesting that EMFs may increase the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, which then could possibly allow more toxins to penetrate the brain tissue. So toxins, particularly like heavy metals that love the brain tissue, but also parasites love the brain tissue as well. So we're seeing some evidence out there that EMFs can do a lot more damage to the brain with toxicity, to your diurnal rhythm with your cortisol, and just being able to balance that cortisol, which when an unbalanced cortisol is huge, as far as increasing your blood sugar, your ability to handle stress, your sleep, your brain function, all of that, but also just the cells and how they communicate back and forth. So we're seeing these things. You know, we've been told before in history that we have, that there's some safe exposures. Believe it or not, at one time, asbestos, there was a safe exposure of asbestos. There was a safe exposure of lead. There was a safe exposure of tobacco. How did that work out? Right? We're seeing now history is showing that that was actually not the case. So I just think it's better for us to be more proactive with EMFs, because I think we're going to see in history that it's going to be, we're going to see some things in history that we don't want to see. And so let's be more proactive with it than reactive, and think to ourselves, I should have listened years ago when I saw some of these studies coming out. Okay. Let's talk about the other thing that I think is important to keep in mind, that not everybody reacts to EMF exposure in the same way. So for instance, children are more vulnerable to EMF exposures because they have thinner skulls and they have these developing brains. So parents, when you are out at the soccer field, do everything you can do or anywhere for that matter, try to keep your kids off the screens. Years ago, when I was raising kids, we had activity bags that we would bring along. And they were literally things that they were paper and pen. They were little race car matchbox things. They were things that kids had to physically interact with. And I know it's so tempting now to just pull out your phone and put on an educational screen time thing. But it's EMFs that we have to be concerned about. Okay, so let's try to minimize that with our kids. If you're outside at a soccer game, keep it away, get them playing, bring a ball along for the sidelines, bring an activity bag along for them to do. Let's go back to that, all right? Some people genuinely have an EMS, it's called an EMF hypersensitivity. All right, so that's a real thing. So first of all, if you know somebody like that, let's give them some grace. But second, it could be you. Maybe you're noticing that. And then there's genetic factors that will predispose people to being more sensitive to EMFs. So if that happens to be you, it's a real thing. I hear you when I see you in practice. Right? So we don't know the long-term effects. That's super important to keep in mind. And small changes that make a big difference. So let's make these small changes together. Now, I don't want to fearmonger you. I don't want you to live in fear. I don't want to live in fear over what we don't know. But I think that awareness is really the key here. Just be aware. Make some simple changes, like the activity bags for our kids, like cutting down on some of the exposure that we have in our home. So let's talk about those right now. First of all, distance is your friend. Keep your devices away from your body when possible. And then never sleep with your phone next to your head. I think that's also important. Then also manage your Wi-Fi exposure. So at night, turn off your Wi-Fi. Use an outlet timer if you need to, and then use wired connections when possible. I think that's also important. Then let's talk about some cell phone safety. Use speakerphone when possible, or an air tube headphone. Keep it away from your body when it's not in use. So, if you're not using your cell phone, put it on the counter, put it away from you. And then when possible, put it in airplane mode. Again, that's a good thing also for at night, or when you're not using it. Have some designated downtime during the day that you don't have your cell phone on you and turned on. Then really create a low EMF bedroom. Remove the electronics out of your bedroom. If you have wiring in your wall, position your bed away from that particular wall, so that's cutting down. Maybe consider some grounding sheets or a grounding mat to sleep on. Use a battery-powered alarm clock. Really trying to get things not plugged into the wall, because that's when you have those EMFs being emitted. Okay, and then laptop. Let's talk about our laptops. Laptop safety tips here. So never use it directly on your lap. Always have something, a barrier in between you. They make a wonderful grounding blanket that you can consider using. It's an EMF blocking blanket. So I have a pregnant friend right now who uses that whenever she's at work or whenever she's on her computer, kind of covering her lap and covering her belly. And then you can disable your Wi-Fi when you're not using it. Okay, so I've said that a couple of times now. Then limit your Bluetooth exposure. You can also get EMF blocking stickers to put on your cell phone, on your laptop, on your AirPods, so that you can limit that. You can protect yourself from that a little bit. Some other things that you can do, things like reduce dirty electricity. So replace your CFL bulbs, remove your dimmer switches. That can make a big difference as well. You can put a smart meter shield on your smart meter device if you happen to have one. And then you can keep your furniture away from your smart meter location as well. So these are all areas that you can think about, see which ones resonate with you. If you have children in your home or you're pregnant, you really do want to consider things like the EMF blankets for protection, and really keeping yourself healthier around from those things. You know, if your home happens to be a smart home, again, what are some ways that you can compromise? Have your smart home at certain hours of the day and turn your smart home off at other hours of the day. Okay, so here's the three things that I'm going to encourage you to do. Begin with these 3 easy changes. First of all, turn your Wi-Fi off at night. The second thing is keep your cell phone away from your body. And the third is remove the electronics out of your bedroom. All right? Again, I don't want to create fear. I don't want you to live in fear. I just want you to live aware and just really challenge the habits that you may have gotten into and asking yourself, is this good for me? Is this good for my family? Is this, just really asking the questions. Become more aware. Small changes can make a big difference. And if that's where you're at, great. Make those small changes because, again, they do make a big difference. So if you're listening online now or later, if you happen to tune in later, I'd love to know in the comments, what is the biggest takeaway that you learned or that you heard today? I love our time together. I do want to remind you of some things that I have available. I do have available a non-toxin free living course that you can take advantage of and that you can learn more about. I'll put a link for that into the comments. I also will put a link to meet with me one-on-one. I love helping you heal, taking your body to the next level optimally, or if you're stuck, if you just don't know which way to turn, your symptoms, you've gone to the doctor, all the tests come back normal, then let's meet. Let's find out what's best for you, and let's get you on a path to healing. And then also, I'll mention the parasite course that I have, both the intense 4-month self-led course that really looks at and removes safely mold, parasites, heavy metals, viruses, really detoxes your body, as well as the full moon course that is 7 days over a full moon that detoxes you from parasites. We all have parasites. Some of us have more parasites than others, and we all could use a parasite cleanse. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. Be safe. Have a great week and become more aware this week of all those EMFs around you. Bye, everybody.